view time for meetings here or something else. I'm about to talk. The time for convening has arrived, so it comes with music too. We start this evening's meetings first with the Public Facilities Authority. I will ask the Secretary to please call the roll.
Chair Rusty Paul.
Present.
Member John Paulson. Here. Member Melody Kelly. Here. Member Melissa Mueller.
Here.
Member Jody Rochelle. Member Tibby DiGiulio. Here. Member Andy Bauman.
Here. Is there a motion to approve the meeting agenda?
Mr. Woody, Secretary.
I'm Chairman.
February 7th, 2023.
All right, so she's got that. We got that straightened out.
Yes.
Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Paulson. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on approval of the meeting minutes. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The meeting minutes are approved. Moving to the first item, new business request for Public Facilities Authority, consideration to authorize the Public Facilities Authority General Manager to set and approve the rates necessary to operate the Performing Arts Center. Mr. Pauken.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for your time this evening. Let me get my thumb on the button here. The performing arts industry and hospitality industry is constantly evolving. Labor shortages, supply chain issues, cost of goods, various other economic impacts on our business, on our customers. City staff regularly analyze the conditions and rates based on the usage of the facility and the costs to the city of providing the services that the rental clients seek. Giving the general manager of the authority the authority to set and approve the rates necessary for operating the Performing Arts Center will allow quicker responses and more flexibility to react to market conditions. First of these is our membership program. Current memberships expire 1 year from the person who signs up, rather than expiring at the same time. And we're a very seasonal-based operation. So making all memberships expire at the same time in the spring would be a more efficient way to operate the membership program. Current benefits are vague. Some of them, anyway, are vague and difficult to fulfill. They haven't been especially communicated well in the past. We really believe there's a potential here to improve this membership program. The proposed levels on this screen are $500, $1,000, $2,500, and $5,000. I won't read through all of these items, but suffice it to say, what we're trying to do is provide things of value to members. Currently, just to give you an example of one of the current member benefits, they have each. We offer our members an advance opportunity to buy tickets to a show. You do. We provide 2 days for a $100 member and 4 days for a $500 member, and so on. It doesn't add value ultimately for that membership. So we are looking to streamline this and also recover our costs. It's more we're spending more money to provide the City View Terrace parties, for example, than we're bringing in from $100 members. So starting this at $500 is also key in keeping with sort of industry standards at PACs around the country, where the sort of the VIP clubs begin at $500 and go up from there. Ticket fees. Most concert venues have sliding service charges that are based on the value of the ticket. Nonprofit organizations typically have flat ticket fees. For example, an Atlanta Symphony Orchestra or an Alliance Theater, they would have a flat ticket fee. Popular concert that might play here instead of, say, if it was at the Buckhead Theater, it's going to be a sliding service charge based on the face value of the ticket. We control our ticketing system. We have the flexibility to serve different types of needs, and we have the potential to earn revenue while still staying below what you would pay at a Ticketmaster venue. And that's really key to this, is we want to be, we don't want to leave money on the table, but at the same time we want to be favorably competitive with our competing venues. This is a venue comparison. As you know, we have a consultancy going with Professional Facilities Management. On the left side is the range of fees at 2 of the PFM buildings. On the right is the range of fees that were at my previous theater in Illinois. We aren't proposing going quite this high. What we are proposing is this schedule here, and this compares to currently a $2.50 across the board. But when the ticket price gets up over $70, $80, we would be looking at a higher service charges. And again, this is online, primarily online sales. And when I went through this process in Skokie, there was just no resistance when we migrated to this sliding scale. Again, because it's so common in the concert world. But we wouldn't be scaling this high if it was a nonprofit type organization like, say, Roswell Dance Theater. If we bring the Atlanta Symphony back here like they were a few years ago, you know, the $5 per ticket is in keeping with what you see at the Alliance at the Atlanta Symphony. The facility fee would increase just by 50 cents to $3. Again, we're below market on that as well. It's $5 over at the Cobb Energy Center by way of example. On rental rates, our rental rates have not changed in 3 years, actually going on 4 years now, since 2019. And 3 to 5% a year is pretty common in the industry. As you know, can imagine, and as you know from going through budgets every year, our costs continue to increase, certainly with respect to labor and costs of goods. And our other venues in the area have continued to raise rates, in some cases by a lot. The Georgia Convention Center came out of the gate in 2021 with a 15% increase. They did then take a couple years off and will come back in next year with another 5%. But you can see some of those comparisons there for some of the other venues. Our proposal is to increase commercial rental rates by 9%. With any new contracts that would come online after July 1st, that, you know, math's not exact, but approximating 3% per year for the last 3 years. Nonprofit organizations will continue to enjoy the 30% discount off of that rate, and then our partner organizations, such as the City Springs Theater Company and the Atlanta Jewish Film Festival, would benefit with a 35% discount off of the nonprofit rate. So that's a very generous way to recognize our valuable partner organizations. This is small print, but just to give you an idea of where we are now and where we would be, the top rental rate, rack rate for a single ticketed performance in the Byers Theater would go from $6,400 to $6,975. Again, I'm not going to read all of these numbers. We have a lot of variableness in this simply because of the different types of uses of the facility, days of the week. Is it a tech day? Is it a performance day? Is it a ticketed event? Is it not? So that's why this chart is so busy. And there's more, because we can then go to the conference center rates, and those two would also go up the 9%. We're very competitive in this area. We do require our renters to use our food and beverage, which would then be on top of these rental rates. So we keep the rental rate itself relatively low, and I think it pays off bringing people into the building. And then you can see some of the other spaces there too, City Bar and Heritage spaces. That is the end of the presentation. So basically our recommendation is to give the general manager of the authority the authority to set and approve the rates necessary to keep the Performing Arts Center operating as efficiently as possible.
And to remind the Public Facilities Authority, the general manager of the Public Facilities Authority also has another job known as a city manager. So just so that everybody's clear. All right, you've heard the report of the Executive Director of the Performing Arts Center. What's the desire of the authority?
Council Chairman Paul,
Mr. Paulson.
I move approval of agenda item PFA 2023-007, consideration to authorize the Public Facilities Authority General Manager to set and approve the rates necessary to operate the Performing Arts Center.
We have a motion by Mr. Paulson. Do I hear a second? Been moved by Mr. Paulson, seconded by Mr. DiGiulio, that we approve agenda item PFA 2023-007, authorizing the Public Facilities Authority General Manager to set and approve the rates necessary to operate the Performing Arts Center. Any discussion?
Mayor Paul.
Mr.
Or
Paulson.
Chairman Paul, sorry. So this is good. I think having the flexibility to do this without having to come back to us every time you change the rates is fine. I would ask that this authority be updated on a routine basis when you make significant changes to rates, just so that we're aware of what you're doing. You wouldn't necessarily have to approve it, but if you make significant changes, I would ask that you come back to us and let us know what's happening and why.
That sounds very reasonable to me.
Thank you. Councilman Paulson, it's my expectation that we will only make these adjustments annually and only if needed. And obviously, I will be sure to notify the members of the Public Facilities Authority before we do any changes to it.
Thank you.
Ms. Rochelle.
Have you checked whether our food and beverage prices are competitive?
Our food and beverage prices.
Yes, pricing.
Yes, they are. Because of menu items, it's hard to, sometimes compare apples to oranges. But where we really excel also, though, is just the quality that we're providing. We hear it over and over again from our clients about how good the food is here. But yeah, we are aware. We are on top of that. It's sometimes hard to compare menu items, but
I know people that have had some events here recently and heard great things. So you're doing a great job.
so
Thank you.
that's
Ms. Mueller.
So just a question on the membership level. When you're going to go to yearly, when will that start? So that's the first part of the question. And the second part is, for people who may have already renewed, what happens to them?
So spring, we just were talking about this today, given the time frame of where we are right now. We're looking at April 15th of next year. Ideally, it would be a little earlier than that, but because of where we are in the calendar now, this next year might be more of like an 11-month year. But but definitely springtime, and in tandem with the announcements of City Green Live and Concerts by the Springs, ideally that would all happen together. For somebody who, I don't know, I'd have to look and see if anyone's actually renewed in the last, say, few weeks. What we did instead was sort of just extend the membership until now, until the end of May, so people could buy their tables and they could come to the first City Green Live terrace party and that sort of thing. So a lot of them have not renewed because we haven't actually asked them to yet.
Okay. Because I think that I did renew, so I'm just curious what that's what drove me to think about what happens.
Oh, I see.
You're in this like mix, what happens? Do you get your benefits for this year as well, and then starts next year whenever you cut
Well,
over?
thank you for your contribution.
Yes.
So anyway,
Thank you.
I didn't know. And then just on the, is there any thoughts, and I don't think I saw that in there, of giving access to the terrace level before City Green Live on a pay-per basis? Like someone doesn't have a membership, but for whatever reason they really want to go?
Yes, you're right. It is not part of that presentation, but we want to do a $50 per person
So you're
ticket.
considering that? Okay.
Yep.
And then just one question on the, if I may, on the ticket surcharges. I don't know, maybe that's not what you call them, but yeah, that when you go, like if you look at, they go from the 20% from the top down to 50%. So if I buy, I think a $20 ticket, then I'm going to be assessed $10 in charges. Is that right? So then I'm going to have to pay $30. I don't know. It just, is that like the industry standard? I mean, or is it? is there a percentage that the fees should total of
So
the
you would be
ticket
on a
price?
you said on a $20 ticket?
Yes.
You would pay $5. So on a percentage basis, that's probably a little on the high side at that bottom.
Okay, because I thought it was $2 plus 5
No, the
plus
5
3.
is instead of everything above. So it's an either-or situation.
Okay,
So on a $20 ticket, there'd be the facility fee of $3 and then the service fee of $2. You get up to a $60 ticket, it's going to be 6 plus 3. The 5 would only kick in basically for nonprofit organizations, so we can be the same.
Okay, I see.
Yeah,
what
so
you're
we can
saying.
be the same
I
as.
was adding up. Thank you.
Mr. Bauman?
Michael, thank you. Just not at the risk of micromanaging, there is an exception. We're an exclusive caterer, right? But there are exceptions. Can you adjust? I mean, just to make a recommendation that you consider adjusting your rental fee if somebody wants to default, or is that already a policy? If somebody wants to default into the opt out of using our caterer for the reasons that are permitted, or using our food and beverage, that they would pay a higher.
We charge a service fee in that instance.
You do a charge service fee?
I don't know what it is off the top of my head,
All right.
but we do that.
Anybody else? All right. Hearing no further discussion, we'll call the question. The question is on Agenda Item PFA 2023-007, authorizing the Public Facilities Authority General Manager to set and approve the rates necessary to operate the Performing Arts Center. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Opposed, no. The item is approved. Is there Mr. DiGiulio? Mr. DiGiulio moves adjournment of the Public Facilities Authority. Is there a second? Been moved by Mr. DiGiulio, seconded by Ms. Rochelle, that we adjourn the Public Facilities Authority. Any discuss? No, you don't discuss. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Opposed, no. We are adjourned from the Public Facilities Authority. Moving to the work session, presentations. We are honored to have two of our state representatives here today, the Honorable Shay Roberts and the Honorable Deborah Silcox, and they're going to give us a quick update on how much damage they did to the citizens of Georgia. No, just teasing. They did a great job for us.
We tried really hard not to do any damage.
All right, welcome. We're just delighted that you're here.
It's great to see you all. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for having us tonight. So it definitely was a unique session. I don't have a lot to base it on since this was only my third one. But having new leadership in both chambers brought with it some unpredictability. We also had 25 new Democratic House members and I think 18 Republican House members. So that's a whole lot of new people. Personally, I was extremely impressed with our freshman class on both sides of the aisle. Really impressed. Gives me hope for the future. I was also proud of my Democratic caucus that we all supported John Burns for the Speaker of the House. He had large shoes to fill following Speaker Ralston, but my conclusion was that he commanded respect in the chamber and that there was much more bipartisan work done on some important issues. Unfortunately, many of our House-sponsored bipartisan bills got hung up in the Senate a little bit. So, for example, HB 520, which was intended to expand on Speaker Ralston's kind of paramount bill, the mental health parity bill from last session, was voted unanimously out of the House and then never got a vote in the Senate. And I think we all can agree our mental health crisis needs to be addressed. So hopefully next session we'll be able to move that. The same was true for HB 404, which was the housing bill that would have finally given tenants a little bit of protection. Another bill that I supported that stalled was obviously in Sandy Springs. It's important, the anti-Semitism bill. It passed out of the House and then stalled, even with it being another bill being stripped and it being put in. I hope that the parties next time can come to some resolution because I think it's important, and I was proud to support that. Another one that stalled, despite having 90 House members sign on to the bill, was HB 71, which would have protected the Okefenokee Swamp from mining, and it didn't even get a committee hearing, so that was really disappointing because I think it's a very valuable natural resource for our state. So all of these bills are still alive for 2024, and we hope we can move them next session. There were some positive results, though. The 2024 budget passed at the end of the night on sine die. It never has everything we want, obviously, but it did have some very positive things that I was proud to support. For the first time in decades, HOPE will cover 100% of tuition costs. So that was huge. Also, my colleague, freshman Imani Barnes, lobbied tirelessly even before session started so that every K through 12 child had fully funded school lunch. $6 million was allocated for that. And I think we can all agree, kids don't need to go to school hungry. It doesn't provide a good learning environment. The budget also provided for a $2,000 salary boost for teachers, making it the average $61,000, which is the highest in the Southeast. Salary increases, $6,000 for state troopers, $4,000 for correction officers. Unfortunately, there was also a $66 million cut to our state university budget, but Governor Kemp has publicly said that he's looking to fill some of the holes that were left in the budget in 2024, and so we'll hope that he does. I'll just list off a few because I'm sure you're going to. I was new to the Judiciary Non-Civil Committee this year. I'm on the Governmental Affairs Elections Subcommittee, and then I was on Judiciary Non-Civil, which was a very busy committee and a lot of time. I think I clocked that we spent 35 hours in like a 5-day period. It was like a full-time job. Some of the ones that I was happy to support that Governor Kemp has already signed is increasing penalties for those who illegally damage critical infrastructure, everything from power grids to election systems. SB 60 addresses issues related to stolen materials like catalytic converters and makes it harder for thieves to sell those, which I guess is a big issue. I didn't know that until we heard the bill. I guess my biggest disappointment, and continues to be my biggest disappointment because it was one of the reasons that I ran for office in the first place, is that none of our public safety bills related to gun safety can even get a hearing. I sponsored HB 584, which was the red flag bill for this term. In light of Nashville, Uvalde, Parkland, and so many others, it is inconceivable to me why we can't do something to address this gun violence public health crisis. You would think keeping guns out of the hands of those with mental health issues would be a good place to start. We're watching our babies being killed at school, and now we have to worry about them pulling into the wrong driveway, knocking on the wrong door, their ball going in the neighbor's yard. I mean, it is getting ridiculous. I'm not one to take away guns. I have guns locked up in my basement, but I think even the Fox News poll this last week showed that Fox News gun owners, I think it was 79% support universal background checks, 80% support red flag laws, and another 81% support raising the age to be able to buy a gun to 21. So I'm hopeful. We had one subcommittee hearing. It was kind of ceremonial. They didn't take a vote. Dr. Al got her pediatric safe storage bill heard. But if these issues are important to any of you, I hope you'll reach out to Senate, House leadership, and Governor Kemp to at least, the least I feel like our elected leaders can do is listen to us, even if they don't vote our way. And we can't get a hearing. So that was disappointing. I also specifically filed HB 425 at the request of some Sandy Springs constituents. It was to amend the Georgia Code, which provides that nothing shall preclude a city or county from reasonably regulating or prohibiting the discharge of firearms within a political subdivision, which we have that in our city. My bill would have simply added "and bows," since discharging of bows has been an issue that people have been concerned about. Unfortunately, it didn't get a hearing as well, but I'm going to be persistent and keep working on it. I guess I'll stop there because I'm sure you've got a lot of things you want to add. But we're hopeful some good stuff passes next time.
Thank you.
It was great to work together.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us again tonight. It's a pleasure to be with y'all. And I'm Deborah Silcox, and I was delighted to return to the House this year with the support of so many wonderful Sandy Springs people, and was even more delighted to be named chairman again of the MARTOC committee, which I'm very proud of. MARTA's not having a great time of it these days, but I'm certainly helping Collie Greenwood do his best, and I'm hopeful that we can get more transit all over Atlanta. I was also named vice chair of the Non-Civil Judiciary Committee, which, as Shay mentioned, it was great to work together in that committee and hear all of the interesting bills. You know, when you start talking about catalytic converters, you're like, what is going on, right? But we actually learned that catalytic converters, when they're stolen from cars, it increases the noise made by that car substantially. And that's been one huge complaint. I'm going to actually be working on a study committee in conjunction with MARTA and the Buckhead Council of Neighborhoods, very interestingly, because MARTA is going to be rolling out their BRT lanes, and the most interesting legal question they have to decide is who owns those lanes. Because if it's DOT, of course, they already have authorization to have cameras on those lanes. But if it's City of Atlanta, if it's Sandy Springs, if it's somebody else, then the question becomes, then whose lane is this, and who's going to make the rules for those lanes, right? One of the things that MARTA wants is they want cameras to control these BRT lanes, to control enforcement of the lanes. They don't want cars going into those lanes illegally, so they want cameras for that. The Buckhead Council of Neighborhoods, on the other hand, they want cameras for these cars or vehicles that are making too much noise, because it's reported that the street racing in the City of Atlanta is so bad that Piedmont, literally, there are patients in Piedmont Hospital that cannot sleep. So I'm going to be looking at these issues with other representatives and over the summer, and working with MARTA and, again, the Buckhead Council of Neighborhoods on that. Another thing that I'll mention that's huge for District 53 and Sandy Springs in general, two of the highlights from the budget, when the Buckhead City Council vote failed, I did encourage leadership to include something for Buckhead, and I'm delighted to say that the governor is about to sign the budget, and that there's $1.25 million that's going to be for up to 20 new Georgia State Patrol officers to be in a post in Buckhead. And I know that is not in Sandy Springs, but I do think that it will help the chief and those that are here to enforce what's going on. And I do think it will deter a significant amount of crime in Buckhead. I will tell you that the APD, of course, you may know, has a no-chase policy. And the Georgia State Patrol, for example, has assisted the APD in over 400 high-speed chases in the last year alone, a lot of those people being the street racers. So I think this is a great step in the right direction. The other thing that I worked very hard on, Mayor Paul was down there for a lot of it, was to get money for our new Anne Frank Center for Education and Responsibility. I could not be more excited about this project. Was able to get $614,000, and I'm proud to say this is the first time that the state has ever funded the Georgia Commission on the Holocaust with state funds. Sandy Springs has propped up the commission for years and contributed significantly, not to mention the donation for the property. And I just think that what is planned is going to be such a great place for kids to learn the importance of a true democracy, the importance of not being hateful and not being prejudicial. And I really do sincerely hope that every school child in Georgia can come to the center. If you're interested in contributing, they are soliciting donations, and I'll just go ahead and make that plug because I know y'all are making a significant contribution with the city, and I know that you've hired a consultant to decide and finalize the building. Very, very hopeful we can get shovels in the ground before the end of the year because the governor's office is already pushing the buttons to say, what's your construction schedule? So would appreciate your support along those lines. Would also mention, as Shay mentioned, some other really priorities and highlights of the budget. We did budget $115.7 million in school security grants. And so every public school in Georgia is going to have $50,000 to enhance their security the way that they would choose. We also put in $4.9 million to the GBI to maintain the Georgia Crime Information Center, which I did not recognize, but Shay and I heard testimony actually about this, that one of the reasons we have so many repeat offenders is judges don't have the correct rap sheets. The GCIC Information Center is just not up to snuff. And the legislature tasked them with getting this up to speed last year, and we are embracing that and moving forward with that. But I'm very hopeful. You may have heard the governor mention that there are about between 1,000 and 2,000 people that commit most of the crimes, at least the repeat crimes in Georgia. I'm very hopeful that this money will be used wisely and we can get the right rap sheets in front of the judges so that these people that truly are committing multiple crimes in multiple jurisdictions can be behind bars. We also put in, as Shay said, we put in extra money for the school lunches and breakfast. So it's not just lunches, it's also breakfast, which I think is fantastic. For the first time, we are going to have the opportunity for people with all of the DNA evidence that we have now. There are people that it's a very high burden of proof, but there are people being exonerated for crimes that they never committed, that they've been behind bars for 20 to 30 years. And so we did pass House Bill 88 to allow the victims' families to reopen cold cases, to hopefully have resolution, even if that person's passed away for many years, that they can have resolution of these cases and hopefully restitution can be paid to the families. As you know, one of Governor Kemp's main themes as governor has been to crack down on gangs, and we also passed a bill that is going to increase the penalties substantially for people who try to recruit minors to be in gangs. And we heard testimony that these gangs, it's just horrible. They're recruiting young people as young as 8 years old to commit crimes and participate in these gangs. So I do think this is justified, and I'm hopeful that they will continue to be successful to cracking down on these gangs. Also, as you may know, the First Lady's main initiative is fighting human trafficking with the Grace Commission. And we passed another bill that I think is helpful to anyone who's seeking refuge or a shelter. SB 42 is going to increase the penalties for any public establishments that are required to post the national hotline number. This hotline number, you go, gosh, it's just a poster in a bathroom. Who cares? It's saved hundreds and thousands of victims. And so I do, again, think this is a great bill to try to catch all the sex traffickers in Georgia, because it is in every community in the state, unfortunately. Education, of course, is always the largest part of our budget downtown, and we are fully funding all of our public schools according to the QBE formula. We also are putting $13.1 billion in to fund that. As Shay mentioned, we've got pay raises for teachers, and the $7,000 that brings it to $7,000 that the governor has raised teachers' pay over his administration, which does make Georgia the highest in the Southeast for the average teacher pay. And we also are putting, as Shay mentioned, $6.3 million for the lunches. There is a new emphasis on early literacy, which I think is so needed, particularly if you look how the scores went down statewide in terms of reading and math scores. There is this new emphasis on literacy. And so we did pass a bill. I think one of the best bills of the session was House Bill 538. It's going to require the State Board of Education approve high-quality instructional materials, and the emphasis is going to be on phonics. How many people learned to read with phonics? I did. So I'm excited that there's going to be this new emphasis on this because third grade reading scores in particular are arguably the most critical year of elementary school. They use those third grade reading scores to determine how many prison beds they should build out going forward. So I'm very hopeful that this new emphasis on literacy in particular and phonics will help the students in Georgia improve their scores. We're also authorized the students that are struggling to earn their high school degree. House Bill 87 is going to authorize the Georgia Board of Education to finance and establish completion special schools to give opportunity for students struggling to complete high school. A lot of these kids have dropped out of high school and they're working jobs, and these are already existing locations. There are about 75 statewide where these kids, if they're working at a garage or they're working in a grocery store, they can come in the evening, come as you are. You don't necessarily have to be clean even. You can just show up at these locations in the evenings and complete your high school degree in 75 locations statewide, which I think is really, really great. We are funding some critical needs. I was disappointed as well without the mental health bill not passing, House Bill 520, but we did still provide $2.4 million for substance abuse recovery programs and funding into mental health services. And we added, important to me because I originally served on the Department of Health and Human Services Board when we rewrote the Medicaid waiver for the first time under Governor Sonny Perdue. And the General Assembly actually added 500 slots to the now comp waiver program to support individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities for $9.4 million, which again I think is fantastic. And we are also giving those with intellectual disabilities if they go to Georgia colleges, there's going to be an additional $1 million in tuition grants for those kids with disabilities. House Bill 129 expands eligibility for the TANF program, the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, benefits to pregnant women for the first time, which I think will help a lot of women that are struggling. And then we are going to push, of course, the mental health bill again next year, and I'm hopeful also that we can pass the school choice program that I was in favor of. This would allow kids that are in the bottom 25% of all the public schools in Georgia to have $6,500 to use as an educational savings account to go to an alternative school or another school of their choice, homeschooling, or a tutor. So that is some of the highlights, but I would certainly welcome y'all's questions if you have any.
Well, I want to thank you. First of all, there were a lot of things that affected cities.
Yes.
And you were all very responsive whenever I reached out and largely supported the city's position on most of those issues, and it was greatly appreciated. We worked together on the anti-Semitism bill, died on the last day, 2 years in a row, died on the last day.
Yeah.
Feeling, we're going to get across the line at some point. The money for the Anne Frank exhibit, greatly appreciated. The council's been carrying the load on that
Exactly.
for years, and the fact that the legislature has stepped up with your help, and I want to say good things about Chairman David Knight, who put it in the budget, worked with you to get it done. Mm-hmm. And we're waiting for the governor to sign the redistricting bill that you two cooperatively worked on and made the changes necessary to get us in compliance with the requirements and with minimal disruption to the individual districts. I mean, some people had to lose some had to gain some, but I think it turned out
I think
to be
all the districts were less than 1%,
Yeah.
which I thought was great because
Right.
people are, I think, happy with their city council
Yeah.
people. And
So I really appreciate the cooperative nature,
yes,
the collaborative nature, and if something came up, you picked up the phone and called. And that's greatly appreciated. We've got a great working relationship with our delegation, so thank you. Any questions by any members? Mr. Baumann.
So yes, thank you. I want to comment about the two of you being here, electoral history, bipartisanship. Deb, when we spoke, you actually said something. I'm going to throw you a softball about what's unique about the State House and how do you want to mention how this community is unique
sure.
around the state?
Yeah.
I think we have representatives from both parties. At Sandy Springs, I mean, it's emblematic of purple, as Sandy Springs is really one of those places in the country
For sure.
that is truly purple, and I think we're better for it. And a lot of places around the state you'll have one party or the other. Not so here, but you mentioned something about the State House that I didn't know.
Yeah, well, thanks for bringing that up. I'm really proud to say that the Georgia House, we truly have no aisle. We sit in assigned seats, and we sit mixed up, and so it's kind of every other Democrat, Republican, Democrat, Republican. We don't just sit with our friends. And I do really believe that that promotes esprit de corps. I mean, you can't help but sit next to someone for 3 months and get to know their family, their pets, their hobbies, whatever. And it really, I think, does make it a better place. I don't think it would ever, what happened in Tennessee, I don't think would ever happen in Georgia, because we have this tradition. I don't think so. I really don't. And what even more than that, I think that the Congress in Washington could take a cue from the Georgia House, because we really do have a great system. And I am delighted to have John Burns as our new speaker. I think he was very even. He did allow more Democratic bills to go through than have gone through in the past. And I think that's great. I want to get the best ideas from everybody.
Yes, I do want to ask a question. I think it's fantastic, and I'm glad you had shared that with me and wanted to ask about that. One of the problems we're dealing with in the area, and I was thrilled to hear about as the person that probably lives, the southernmost part of the city, I'm so close to Buckhead, I can see it. And I was happy to hear about the Georgia State Patrol. I think that's well received, and you're absolutely right, that affects Sandy Springs greatly. But one of the things that we're really struggling with is the backlog of cases, particularly violent criminal cases, homicides, assaults, rapes, down at the Fulton courts. And, I don't think COVID certainly made it a lot worse. Mm-hmm. But those aren't cases that can just go away at every level, from a victim standpoint, from a police standpoint. And frankly, even from the defendants. I mean, for defendants that are being held, Absolutely. Who are entitled to a speedy trial. Is there anything that can be done, or is there anything we can do to advocate at the state legislature to assist Fulton County or any other jurisdiction where the backlog is really severe and Chief would speak to this, is really affecting law enforcement. It's affecting how we do business and the number one area of public safety. Yeah. I think it's a significant threat. And
no, I agree with you. And I spoke, actually, that we had the state of the judiciary, where the Chief Justice comes and addresses, the Senate comes to the House, of course, because where it's happening. But they come to the House, and we hear a speech. And after his speech, I actually asked the Chief Justice, I said, is it true, how many cases are still backed up in Fulton County that, as you mentioned, Councilman Baumann, that have not received a speedy trial? And he said there were still over 4,000 in Fulton County. And I know that Fonnie Willis has done the best that she could. I know she's been given a lot of additional resources to work through this backlog. And I'm hopeful that if she gets the indictments that she wants between July 1st and September, whatever, right, that she can really jump on this with full force. But I don't know that there's any more that can be done. I know that the City of Atlanta has a lot of reserve money and a lot of federal money sitting around, and I would hope that y'all would encourage them to use some of that money to get these people at least adjudicated, because like you said, they should not be, they certainly are guaranteed a speedy trial under the Georgia Constitution, and that has not happened. And I think that, Mhm.
I am concerned about speedy trials. I'm really concerned, though, about making sure that those need to be held to justice are held to justice.
Yes,
Go free, but
absolutely.
we really need to hold to account.
So, yeah, like I said, I would encourage you to ride to the city of Atlanta and ask them to spend some of their federal money to get these cases cleared up.
All right, ladies, thank you very much. We appreciate you being here, and we look forward to working with you over the interim, because there'll be some study committees and other things going on that'll have an impact on us, loss negotiations, study committees, and others. So we'll be working with you over the summer, and then again, clearly when the session starts in January.
Oh, truck weights was another big
Truck
area.
weights, but they don't affect us now, thankfully.
know.
All right, we'll move on. Let's move on to the Stormwater Management Plan overview. Is Amir? Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for your time in advance. I was here back in October of last year and presented the municipal separate storm sewer system permit requirements, and you authorized the notice of intent. I'm just here to give you an update on where we are right now. After your approval of the notice of intent, we filed it, and subsequently EPD, Environmental Protection Division of Georgia, approved or renewed our MS4 permit. That happened December 5th of 22. So we are set for the next 5 years to work with this permit. However, as a component of this permit, we have to file a stormwater management report or program, which is a supplement to the MS4 permit, and it outlines how the city plans to comply with and stay within the permit. So this requirement will be with us for the next 5 years. The permit itself and the swamp is really the stormwater management program is the same package. So again, the stormwater management program is considered a supplement to MS4 permit, and it contains the standard operating procedures, schedules, inspection forms, and all the documents that are required to support the permit and its implementation. There are certain minimum goals that are set within the permit that we have to comply with. And also, once the stormwater management permit program is approved by the council, and it would be submitted to Georgia EPD for review and approval. And as I again mentioned, it's a 5-year permit. It is a document that can be modified over the years and could be edited and approved by the Georgia EPD. What I have on the screen is basically a summary of the components of the stormwater management program. Sorry that it's hard to read, but it has many components, many items that we have to comply with. This is just the last basically review that we had last Friday with the directors and the internal members of our team that provide to the program, and they're partly responsible for it. The green basically shows you the items that we've already completed. Yellow, which is primarily most of the work, will be ongoing throughout the year until end of December or 31 of the year. And the red ones are the items that we'll still basically we'll be working on and we'll be completing. However, as I kind of explained, we are reviewing those quarterly and making sure we stay on track and will be done by the December. The reporting is, just for your information, is done by February 15 of the following year. There are 3 important key updates to the 23 stormwater management program. I've listed here and I'll go through each one very quickly. One is that we were revising, or there'll be requirement to revise the city-owned or maintained stormwater pond inventory, revision of the measurable goals that will mirror the permit requirements for the city sweeping requirement, and also revising the municipal facilities inventory. I will go through each one very quickly. Stormwater ponds, the permit itself requires us to provide 3 categories versus the 2 that we used to follow. The second bullet there, the publicly owned by other entities, were not reported previously. Moving forward, we'll be reporting those, and as an example of that would be basically Fulton County schools that are not covered under an independent MS4 permit, and we'll be basically doing that work and including that in our reporting. Privately owned and permittee owned or city owned were always reported, and we'll continue to do that. On the next bullet, previously with our basically stormwater management report, we reported 44 city-owned or maintained ponds. Based on the current legal interpretation, and our city attorney is here in case there are any explanation there, Fulton County easements did not become City of Sandy Springs easements upon incorporation. So the 44 that I have listed up there and we used to report, now we believe 10 should be removed that list, because the 10 are the ponds that we have not been maintaining, or we do not have any city-owned easements. The rest of the remaining 34, 18 ponds, we do have City of Sandy Springs easement, and the remaining 16 that are Fulton County easements, the city has been regularly maintaining those, and there's history of maintenance on those. On the street sweeping, since 2000, or the previous one, 2018, reporting, the requirement was to file, basically to have a minimum 1 mile per year of sweeping requirement. However, in 2018, the city opted to have a requirement for itself of 260 miles of roadway monthly reporting, which that translated to 3,120 miles of annual sweeping reporting. Based on 2023 MS4 permit requirements, that stays unchanged as far as the minimum requirement, which is sweep at least 1 mile per year. We believe we should reduce our minimum requirement to meet or to mirror what the basically the stormwater management permit requires, and basically meet the sweep at least 1 mile per year. However, we would continue with our goal of doing the 260 miles of sweeping monthly and doing the entire yearly. So that stays, the contract stays in place, the goal stays in place. It's just a matter of reporting and meeting that 1 mile requirement, which gives the city flexibility. On the municipal facilities side, again, in 2018 to 22, we reported 14 inventories that there were potential of cause of pollution. That's the examples would be fueling stations or material storage, which we had, if there are any on those utilities, such as fire stations or fleet maintenance locations. However, out of the 14, 7, there were 8 parks. Off of the one that is on Morgan Falls Athletic Field, we believe the other 7 should be removed. They're just city parks with no threat of basically pollution or material storage or fueling stations. So we are proposing to remove those from our list.
All right, any questions? Mr. Paulson.
So we've removed these 10 ponds from our permit who has responsibility for those 10 ponds that we took out of ours?
Those would be basically Fulton County always had the responsibility because they were dedicated to, these ponds were dedicated to the Fulton County.
And not to us?
Not to us, not to the city of Sandy Springs. And based on when the incorporation occurred, those did not transfer to the city. However, city opted to maintain 16 of the 34 that we are willing to, we are going to maintain. Yes,
Thank you.
Yes.
Any others? All right, Dr. Kelly.
Thank you. This was very helpful. Back to these municipal facilities, what does it mean in the context of this plan? What does it mean to even be a municipal facility, to be listed as one?
Any city-owned facility that is potential for for any kind of pollution that are city-owned and operated and is categorized. I guess maybe I'm just jumping to the answer. But if there's potential, a city-owned facility there's threats of pollution, then that should be reported.
Okay. And I guess you monitor pollution and other
Yes, ma'am.
issues.
Yes, we do inspections, and we would report on annual inspection and reporting.
Okay. Do we have I guess piggybacking off of Councilman Paulson's question, do we have a fairly decent relationship with Fulton County for those 10 ponds and others?
I would defer that question to our...
That bomb landed right in Mr. Lee's lap. Go ahead.
No is the answer. To explain it a little bit in this context is that when the city was formed, evidently, there was a thought that everything Fulton County in the city limits, newly formed, became everything city, and it's just not the status of the law. There's a basic law that says in order for property to be owned by the city, whether it's fee simple title or an easement, it requires three things: the conveyance from the owner, and the acceptance by the council, and then the recording of the deed. None of these easements that Amir's talking about tonight were ever accepted by the city. They're never presented by Fulton County for ownership or transfer of title to the city. So they remained the property of Fulton County. This issue came to a head in Arlington Cemetery. Fulton County owns a huge drainage easement over there that was the target of a lawsuit filed by my predecessor, filed against Sandy Springs, and my predecessor brought Fulton County into the claim, and the decision all the way to the Supreme Court of Georgia said exactly what I just told you, that once you own it until, and the responsibility of it also, until you convey it, and that conveyance is accepted by the city. And those have never been accepted. The ones that Amir is leaving, that he's suggesting to you that the city leave on the report to EPD, the city has an interest in those ponds, in that, and stormwater is it's a tough issue to manage and tough issue to determine who has ownership of it. Some of these ponds gather roadway water, and the roadways did escheat to the city when the city was formed, so they do belong to the city. Things done in the city streets by the city require that the city do something to control and maintain that water, and some of these ponds that are left in the EPD report fit that category. The 10 that are coming out have no city bearing and are titled in the name of Fulton County. Fulton County has been, what's the word, Amir? They've not been respondent to our inquiries about partnering, participating. We have an issue right now on the north end where we have a roadway that is in danger, that we need an easement to fix it. Fulton County has it, and we've reached out to them to try and get ownership of that easement, and they've been non-responsive.
If I understand correctly, they're also responsible for having a stormwater management plan as well? Like this is a statewide kind of? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, each municipality and county yes, they're required to have it.
Any other questions? Mayor, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, we're moving to the Hammond Drive Corridor Improvement Bridge Type Selection Overview. Mr. Johnson.
Evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here to go over some of the aspects of the Hammond Drive corridor, specifically the bridge type selection. As you may recall, we had, as part of T-Splost 1, we had a $60 million concept from Roswell Road to Barfield. As part of T-Splost 2, T-Splost, that would have taken the whole T-Splost 2 out. So what we've done is refine the scope, and we've taken the project from Boylston to Glen Ridge, and this includes moving the alignment to the north in the two-lane section, and there'll be roundabouts at Hildebrand and Laurel Terrace. And one of the key components of this, as requested from the neighborhoods, is to keep access between the neighborhoods on Hammond so that we don't have big roadway cutting it off. And so the low point at Hammond is the K-Ron. And so what's going to be part of this project is a bridge over K-Ron, where K-Ron will be a multi-use path with no vehicular traffic, but it allows folks to cross the corridor without having to cross a roadway. As I mentioned, the project is $35 million. Right now, we are working toward right-of-way phase. We should get that in the fall. We're finishing up the preliminary plan, should have right-of-way plans by hopefully September. We anticipate that'll take a couple of years and then get into construction at the end of 25, and that should take at least 2 years is the plan currently. And as I kind of mentioned, the bridge at K-Ron, what we looked at is the New Hammond Drive to the north, provides internal pedestrian connectivity, developed as part of the outreach with the community. And so what we looked at this bridge was what kind of span, how wide do we want the opening to be, what kind of finish do we want, and what kind of budget do we want to go against the project. So the finish is actually going to be what we're already doing with the bridges over 400 that we're redoing or paid for enhancements over 400 with the managed lanes at Pitts and Roberts and Spalding, and also the bridge over Mount Vernon, the Mount Vernon Bridge over 285. So it will look similar to that. And then we also were looking at costs, including the cost to maintain and to construct. And then the pedestrian experience, what it's going to look like as you go underneath it. You don't want a tunnel. You want something that's open as much as you can with it being cost effective. So what we've got, we had 5 alternatives that we looked at. What you're looking at here is alternative 1. This is an AASHTO precast bridge. You'll see these all over the state. This is kind of your cookie cutter bridge. It's got those beams, and this is a 90-foot span. So basically like a 9-story building is what, if you put it on its side, that's the opening. And there's the pedestrian path under K-Ron. There's kind of the look of what it'll look like from a facade standpoint. So that's about $1.3 million, including maintenance. The next alternative we looked at, broken into 2 parts, the bulb T, which looks a lot like an AASHTO girder, but allows you to have a 125-foot span, so 12-foot building. And then the other option was the U-beam, which is a little cleaner look, but we're talking 1.9 and $2.4 million in these options. The next one we looked at was what you call the box beam. There's the box beam on the left has openings, kind of would look similar somewhat, but less deep than the AASHTO girder, about 1.3 million. And then the adjacent box beam, which is actually even a little more narrow, but it has more of a ceiling effect. and it actually has a cheaper maintenance cost over the life of the project. And this may be this is the one you may have seen in the past when we presented to the community. This is a cast-in-place arch, but it is also $3.5 million. It's a 160-foot span. And then finally, the fifth alternative we looked at was a hollow core slab, which is not very deep. So, but to get the 90-foot span, you'd have to put a pier in the middle. So it does have a nice ceiling effect as well, but you do have to put a pier even to get the 90-foot span. So just as a summary of what we looked at, the ash toe girder is about 1.3, the bulb, and the alternate twos, 1.9 and 2.4, those are the 125-foot spans. The box beam that has spaces in between, about 1.5. The adjacent box beam also is about 1.5. The cast-in-place arch, 3.4. And then finally, the slab with the center bent is about 1.6. So as we've looked at this from an aesthetic standpoint, from a maintenance standpoint, staff recommends that we do the adjacent box beam, which is 3B. It's about the price, a little bit more than the ash toe, but the maintenance cost is better, and it also, one of the challenges with the opening beams, you have, nests and birds and things can get in there, so the maintenance cost is higher. So it'll be a cleaner look, less maintenance, and about the price of the ash toe. You bet. So that would be the picture on the right, 90-foot span, so it's kind of a ceiling effect versus this is the cheapest one. But the cost is a little more. Well, we tried to show that, so that is, this was a very nice video that we did as part of the thing. So these all show that, it's just the picture's in the way. Yes, they all do. So 90 feet, 125, and then 160, which is the most expensive. So those are the options. Any questions?
Any questions?
I have a quick comment. I agree with you. The simple ash toe beam, this is where all the critters sit, and people aren't driving their car underneath here, so the birds can't poop on their car, but they're going to be walking underneath here, so birds have an uncanny ability to hit what they aim for.
Exactly.
So I think not having those shelves is a great idea, so I think this option 3B is a good one.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Any objections? Go forth.
All right. Thank you.
All right. That concludes the work session. We'll move now to regular order. I'd like to call this meeting of the Sandy Springs City Council to order for Tuesday, May the 2nd, 2023. Will the city clerk make the announcements and call the roll?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. First, I would like to remind those in attendance, please silence all cell phones and other electronic devices. Individuals who would like to provide public comment at a city council meeting are required to complete and submit a public comment card in advance of the meeting. Public comment cards are available online and at the chamber entrance. As I call roll, please confirm your attendance. Mayor Rusty Paul.
Present.
Councilmember John Paulson. Councilmember Melody Kelly.
Present.
Councilmember Melissa Mueller.
Here.
Councilmember Jody Rochelle. Councilmember Tibby DeJulia. Councilmember Andy Bauman.
Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, have we received any public comment cards?
We have not.
All right, we'll close the public comment period. Is there a motion to approve the meeting agenda? Mr. DiGiulio. Mr. DiGiulio moves approval of the meeting agenda. Is there a second? Second. Been moved by Mr. DiGiulio, seconded by Dr. Kelly to approve the meeting agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question is on approval of the meeting agenda. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The meeting agenda is approved. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Mayor Plow,
Ms. Rochelle.
I move that we approve the consent agenda for Tuesday, May 2nd.
There's a motion by Ms. Rochelle. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved by Ms. Rochelle, seconded by Ms. Mueller, that we approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question is on approval of the consent agenda. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The meeting agenda, consent agenda is approved. Moving on to public hearings, will the clerk please read the first item?
This is agenda item 2023-129, consideration to approve an alcoholic beverage license application for Real Taco Sandy Spring LLC, doing business as Real Taco Sandy Springs at 227 Sandy Springs Place. That's Suite 506, Sandy Springs, Georgia 30328. This is ABL 99298, presented by Chief Financial Officer Tony Carlisle.
Ms. Carlisle.
Good evening, Mayor Paul and City Council. This is a new application for consumption on the premises of wine, malt, and distilled spirits, Real Taco Sandy Springs LLC, DBA Real Taco Sandy Springs, 227 Sandy Springs Place, Suite 506, Sandy Springs, Georgia 30328. The applicant, Damian Otero, has met all requirements and staff recommends approval. This is a new application. It is in Councilwoman Melissa Mueller's district.
All right, have we received any public comment cards? All right, we'll close the public hearing. You've heard the report of the Chief Financial Officer. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul,
Ms. Mueller.
I move that we approve agenda item 2023-129, the approval of an alcoholic beverage license application for Real Tacos Sandy Springs LLC, doing business as Real Tacos Sandy Springs, 227 Sandy Springs Place, Suite number 506, Sandy Springs, Georgia 30328, ABL number 99298.
We have a motion by Ms. Mueller. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Been moved by Ms. Mueller, seconded by Ms. Rochelle, that we approve agenda item 2023-129, an alcoholic beverage license application for Real Tacos Sandy Springs LLC. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on agenda item 2023-129, the alcoholic beverage license application for Real Tacos. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
This is agenda number 2023-130, consideration to adopt the 2023 to 2027 CDBG Consolidated Plan and 2023 Annual Action Plan, presented by Planning and Zoning Manager Michelle McIntosh Ross.
Ms. McIntosh Ross.
Good evening. Yes. Yes, thank you. As you recall, I was here in February to present the draft 2023 to 2027 CDBG Consolidated Plan and the 2023 Annual Action Plan. The Consolidated Plan is the document that describes the multi-year goals and objectives for the 5 years, which are, as you recall, to continue with the multi-year sidewalk projects along Roswell Road, to defease the loan that we have, the 108 loan, as well as to work on the Hope Road sidewalks. The Consolidated Plan goals and objectives are carried out through the Annual Action Plan, which lays out the annual planned projects, which are to pursue the Roswell Road multi-year sidewalk program between Long Island Drive and Northwood Drive, defease the loan, and to continue to prepare for the Hope Road sidewalk project. These projects will improve mobility, including pedestrian access to jobs, commercial and retail services, city parks, public transit, and other services within the targeted census tracts to benefit the low to moderate income households within Sandy Springs, as well as residents that have disabilities, because these sidewalks will be fully ADA compliant. These projects meet the objectives of the grant program and have the greatest impact on the community and are easily interconnected with other local and state infrastructure investments in the area. We are required to submit this by mid-May of 2023, so we are on schedule. So we have a resolution before you tonight to consider the adoption of the Sandy Springs 2023 to 2027 Consolidated Plan and the 2023 Annual Action Plan for submission to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development to continue our participation in the CDBG program.
All right, you've heard the report of the planning and zoning manager. Do we have any public comment cards? All right, you've heard the report. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul.
Oh, go ahead.
Mr. Baumann.
I move adoption of agenda item 2023-130, request to adopt the 2023 through 2027 CDBG Consolidated Plan and the 2023 Annual Action
We have a
Plan.
motion by Mr. Baumann. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Been moved by Mr. Baumann, seconded by Mr. Paulson, that we approve agenda item 2023-130, the adoption of the 2023-27 CDBG Consolidated Plan and Annual Action Plan. Any discussion? Dr. Kelly.
Let me find my notes. So our most recent allotment was about 550,000.
528.
Oh, 528, okay. There's somewhere in the document, it refers to it as loan guarantee assistance, or is that different than, what is the term loan guarantee assistance?
Well, I'm not sure where that is. We'll have to take a look at it. But the 528, 553 or so is what our allotment is for 2023. And we have the projects that we identified, the sidewalk, as well as portion of it for the fees and the loan. So I'm not sure. Did you have a...
Okay, and just, I guess, a quick question
okay,
about...
I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
So the loan assistance is the 108 loan that we get actually, sorry, that we actually get from HUD. So that's what that is. You're saying that we're still able to participate in the 108 loan, and if we did need more money at any point, that we could potentially take out a larger loan. But that's what it is. So you have to also qualify for the 108 loan.
Okay, so the sentence I'm looking at, in June 2022, HUD awarded the City of Sandy Springs the loan guarantee assistance under, like you said, Section 108 in the principal amount of $550,054.
So that's the allocation
Yeah,
from
that's
that
what
we
we
got
borrowed
from last year.
under the program.
Okay, I thought we borrowed like $2.8 million at one time or something.
Yeah, back in
Yeah.
2017.
We did, but that's I guess that's what we've had. Is it balanced, correct?
Yes, but that's what we borrowed in 2017.
Okay.
Oh, okay, so that 550 is a part of the 2.8 as well, or what's the relationship between those numbers?
So the 2.8 is the amount we borrowed back in 2017 or so, right? And then we get an allotment of for our projects, and a portion of it we can use to pay down on this loan. So we pay $287,000 twice a year.
Right, and so the 550 represents what?
Represents the money we get each year, which we use portion of it for our projects and
There
a
it
portion
is.
for the,
So the 550 is the allotment.
exactly.
Okay, so in June 22, we received 550,000,
Yes, June 22. Yes,
June
February
22.
of this year, we got the 528.
and then 5.
Mhm.
All right.
The CDBG amount is based on congressional appropriations.
Right.
And as an entitlement city, based on the formula, the population, and number of lower mod families we have, and all the other criteria, then HUD sends us an allocation based on the formula.
Right.
And so that's what we're talking about here.
Right, and it's referred to as loan guarantee assistance.
Right. In other words, the loan is guaranteed by our annual appropriation.
Right.
Okay.
Mr. Paulson.
So how much is left of the 2.8 that we took out in 2017? We got to be close to being done with it, aren't we?
No, we started paying on, sorry, yes, Michael, but we started paying on it in 2019. Am I correct?
Michael, can you come to the microphone, please? Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The The 2.8 million is still actually in a special bank account to be able to use on the projects because some of the projects stalled. They are going forward now. That will be used. How much is left on the what we owe for the 2.8 million is we've only had, I believe, 2 years. I believe this is only our second year of actually paying P&I. We had 2 years of just interest only, and then we just started paying 2 years worth of P&I. We pay principal and interest in one semiannual payment, and then interest only in the other semiannual payment. So we still have the loan itself, or the note, or however you want to phrase it, still has 80% of it still outstanding. The cash we have is still in the bank, waiting for these projects, the Roswell Road project, some other ancillary projects, and the Hope Road project to go forward. And as we know, there's always hang-ups for the projects, but that's still sitting there waiting to be used. Not sure about when you've talked about the loan guarantee. I think Mayor Paul said it right. We get that money, and we can. The loan has first claim on it. Our annual debt service has first claim, but that's not all of it. And then the rest can go to the projects. Because these things have been hung up, we've been able to use the annual allotment both for debt service and to pay towards the project, the portion of the projects that have gone forward. We'll be tapping into that next year. We'll be tapping into the loan proceeds next year. So that's just kind of a general financial overview of the program. Did that answer the question, sir? You're welcome.
Ms. Mueller.
Michelle, a question on the numbers that were used. So in the 2020 decennial status census, there's a slight difference in the packet than what's out on the website. I mean, it's very small. I mean, is there differences in the data sets than if someone goes out and looks at that data versus what's here? Because I'll give you an example. So the population and number of households slightly is different, but yet the rental and number of owners, those match, the percentages match. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, so there's several different data sets that we use in here. HUD has websites and directs us to what data sets we need to use. Not all of them are current. Some we have for 2020, some 2021. Some of the data are like between 2015 and 2019, and that's just what we had available, and those are the data sets that we use that they recommend.
Okay, it's just a small amount. I didn't know. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question is on agenda item 2023-130, the adoption of the 2023-2027 CDBG Consolidated Plan and the 2023 Annual Action Plan. All in favor of the motion say aye. Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item 2023-131. This is consideration to authorize amendments to the City of Sandy Springs FY 2023 budget to reallocate capital project budgets and adjust interfund transfers. Presented by Chief Financial Officer Tony Carlisle.
Ms. Carlisle.
We are requesting Mayor and Council to consider authorizing a comprehensive amendment to the FY 23 budget to reallocate capital project budgets and adjust interfund transfers. We're asking you to approve a comprehensive budget amendment to reallocate funds previously budgeted under certain projects which have been closed and or reduced, to amend expected funding sources from interfund transfers, and to transfer certain projects and budgets to the Public Facilities Authority. Some background is several projects previously funded in the CIP fund have been completed or closed, with the remaining funding available for reallocation. Further, other existing projects need increased funding, while certain other projects under the CIP fund and general fund would benefit from accounting in a different fund, such as the Public Facilities Authority. As a part of those changes, the sources of certain related interfund transfers also need to be adjusted. The discussion is, instead of bringing multiple budget amendments, we're bringing a single comprehensive budget amendment to adjust all capital projects and funding sources at one time. All funds have been allocated and or transferred to the CIP fund. There are adequate funds available for this recommendation with no current financial impact. In fact, the general fund will benefit from this transfer, assisting us with the planned pay-go transfer to the PFA in FY24.
All right, you've heard the report of the Chief Financial Officer. What's the desire of council? Mr. Paulson.
I move approval of agenda item 2023-131, authorizing an amendment to the City of Sandy Springs fiscal 2023 budget to reallocate capital project budgets and adjust interfund transfers.
We have a motion by Mr. Paulson. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Paulson, seconded by Dr. Kelly, that we approve agenda item 2023-131, authorizing amendments to the City of Sandy Springs FY23 budget, reallocating capital project budgets and adjusting the interfund transfers. Any discussion?
Mayor Paul.
Mr. Paulson.
So we're just shifting money from one area that was designated to go into the project. They didn't spend the money on the project, just rolling back into the general fund or back into another project, right?
Exactly. Some of these projects have closed and the funds are remaining, and then there are other projects that we did not start the project, so we're moving those funds back into the general fund.
Mr. DiGiulio.
Tony, how much money are we talking about?
Collectively, about $24 million, $25 million.
$25 million?
Yes,
Oh, I thought you were going to tell us 200,000.
collectively.
Collectively,
So,
25.
yes.
How many projects is this?
We have a number of projects. This is just a lot of cleanup on the books for those projects that have just been lingering with these excess funds sitting there. So we just want to do one cleanup to move these funds for the availability of use in the general fund.
And are these funds now available in the upcoming budget in addition to what we've talked about today, or is this already included?
I'm going to ask the budget manager to speak.
It's a combination, Councilman.
This is a lot of projects that have been sitting around, either completed or closed, but we're trying to get the money out of Hawk back to being useful.
Back. Mayor, members of council, basically, I did want to clear one thing. Most of this is not going back directly into the general fund. They are actually being swapped around between projects. There's a little bit that is going, a little bit left over after the ins and outs that are going back to what we call our capital contingency. They're staying in the capital fund because our capital contingency took a little bit of hit with our Triangle project and various other projects. So we're trying to close out these projects that are done. That's the majority. That's the big orange thing. That's the first one or the second one on here. I think it's, yeah. Is it part of the agenda packet? Okay. Can we rotate that? I don't know if I have control of this thing. Scroll to the pretty colors. And the 25 million is a little bit overstated because the way accounting works with our various funds, that kind of doubles up some of the action in there. But I would still say it's probably about between 15 and 20 million is what's shifting around. Here we go. So most of this amendment is this big orange section. And those are all these projects that have finished. And until we in finance start taking a look at the accounting system, say, hey, nothing's been really spent on this project in a while. We get a chance to check out the project manager. Are we done? Oh yeah, we're done. So I'm like, okay, so let me close out the budget on that. And that keeps because effectively the way it appears in the system is that we actually put cash in a project. And it spends it. And we're usually good. Our public works folks are pretty efficient at keeping things in budget. And so there'll be a little bit left over. In order to keep that in capital fund and keep the capital fund budget in balance, we, instead of just sending that back to the general fund and say, hey, spend it on anything, because Sandy Springs had kind of based on a foundation of putting projects in the ground. Any money that gets allocated to the capital fund stays in the capital fund or stays in one of our capital funds to actually do things, to put things in the ground and to benefit all citizens. So we manipulate, we take that, we close the books on a project. If it has budget left, we'll put it in capital contingency. In this case, we had a couple of projects that got started and need some funding now. One of those is Veterans Park. And when we had an amount, that's described down also in this thing. Okay, let's go scroll back down, scroll up, well, whatever, to the very first red item.
Hold
Okay.
on, Michael.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The detail that council is specifically interested in, because these are your account codes out of Munis. Caroline, if you'll scroll down to, I believe it's page 3 of that, there. This is the description that defines what is shifting around here.
Right. The numbers are on top, and the corresponding color-coded descriptions are there. So, for example, I'll just read the amount. We had an amount budgeted into one of our projects that probably really shouldn't have been in that particular project. It was taken over by that particular concept was taken over by T-Splost. So, so as not to have this thing double budgeted, and with Veterans Park needing that, we had $2.7 million in one project that's not needed. It's now going to be funded by T-Splost, and just so happens Veterans Park needs $2.7 million. So we take it out of one project and put it into another. It stays in the capital fund. The next, and there's the reasons for making that allocation there if you want to take a look. The next item is just the majority of this page is just closing projects that are done. We find out that they're done. We need to zero out the budget, and there's usually something left over. In this case, one of the things that needed funding is Fire Station 5. We ended up putting that on as mentioned in the agenda memo, that we had that on the PAYGO method. We only had $1 million free in the general fund to give to that project, but it needed $2 million from the general fund. You can't obligate the general fund to give you next year's money. So we gave them $1 million. We said, come back next and hopefully we'll fund another $1 million. By closing out all these projects, we found $1 million. And so instead of burdening the fiscal year 24 budget with that, we're going to say, okay, capital fund, give it to the Public Facilities Authority, which is a type of capital fund, so it stays putting things into the ground for the citizens, and allays us having to burden the fiscal year 24 budget with another pay-as-you-go. So this completes that would complete the funding of Fire Station 5. Let's see. Other examples of some things changing are the next ones, the yellow and green. We were going to purchase some defibrillators using the capital fund because a large-scale purchase like that can be considered a capital item. The fire department found out it was much more economical to lease them. However, you don't account for leases in the capital fund. So we said, okay, that's $100,000. That's going to go back. That's going to take care of 1 year's lease payment. I think it was, we had $1,500. We're going to put in another $1,524 and buy them all then. But because of the deal change, we're going to take $100. The first lease payment should start in June, and then we have $50,000 again that we're just going to put into capital contingency to be reallocated to other projects when we need them. Yes, go right ahead.
You just said is going out of this, but then today we talked about put $100,000 that we're spending to purchase defibrillators, right?
It will be a combination of purchase and lease. Those are the additional ones in the next fiscal year that are needed.
So we're taking it out and putting it.
This is moving to operations to the general fund because a lease is an ongoing expense rather than a capital item, which is a one-time expense.
And this represents only a portion. The amount that was funded under this project was only a portion for the purchase of all the defibrillators that were needed. And instead of putting in a little now and a little later and buying them, it found it was going to be more economical to lease them. So we just basically the plan changed. As you all know, budget's a plan. The plan changed.
Mayor Paul.
Mr. Baumann.
Eden.
Yes, sir.
So what is the time sensitivity? Closing out projects to me is more of a, that feels to me very administrative. We've done that many times before, and we draw the money back. Then we start moving into sort of accelerating years and reallocating. And, we've had this discussion about budget amendments, to what extent they should go through the original process of public hearings. There's a lot of work that went into this, so not to be in any way dismissive of that, actually, because there's clearly a lot of work, and I saw this before. I guess I have an objection to the process here. I feel like that we probably, and I think we're sort of doing it now, need to be doing a work session style discussion in the public sphere, like we're having now, with a chance to do questions, because this is so comprehensive that absent some time sensitivity, I know there is some with the impact fees, as I recall. I don't know specifically what that time sensitivity. But these are some of these approach priority and policy decisions that, while I don't know that there's a lot of controversial, there may be some that require some thought, maybe require hearing from the public, whether we do that in a public hearing or not. I would love to continue this conversation and get the briefing, but to understand whether this could be tabled for an upcoming meeting, but without doing something unintentionally as it relates to time constraints.
So this would need to be cleaned up, so to speak, by the end of this fiscal year. So that's June 30th. Ideally, because some of this is balancing the capital fund, and we will be utilizing them to offset needs for the 23 budget, as you heard me mention in the budget workshop this afternoon about Veterans Park and Fire Station number 5, we're not having to pledge funds out of FY24 to go towards those expenses, because Michael has worked and found these and identified these. So my recommendation, if council would prefer to defer this item, we can defer it to the next or the following council meeting, but it would need to be cleaned up by the end of the fiscal year.
Yeah, I mean, the code lines don't really provide any help. The narrative provides help, but it would be good to see sort of what dollars are, certainly anything more than de minimis, what dollars are going from where to where. Was there an impact? I mean, are we simply meeting the existing, for example, on the Veterans Park, are we simply meeting the existing anticipated needs, or has anything changed with the budget? And I'm not suggesting, those are the kinds of questions I would want to ask potentially in a work session environment, because I think, sure, we could do some briefings, but I do think because it's of a budgetary nature, I personally would like to see this in the next meeting's work session, and potentially even voting on it at the next meeting, but with some opportunity to really, more than just from Friday to today, for us and the public to digest and weigh in. That's just my feeling. I would, we'll hear from my colleagues before I make a substitute motion.
I would just say that as far as time sensitivity goes, the impact fee does have to be taken before the end of the fiscal year. Some of these were going to be presented with your approval of the project. For example, Veterans Park. I believe that our construction manager presented that, either construction manager or our facilities manager, director of facilities, Dave Wells, presented that a couple of meetings ago with a budget amendment. That was also the same meeting that it was requested that we make a comprehensive thing. I can tell you that nothing here is changing what you request. Is more like enacting on the budget side what you went ahead and approved on the operational side.
But to your point, excuse me, Michael,
That's
what
fine.
we can do is prepare a slide that outlines what each of these account codes are, because some of them are very old. They've been on the books for many, many years and needed to be cleaned up.
Well, I'm sure much of this is administrative, but there's
It
some that's
is.
probably, I mean, the sheer number and collectively, and then some of the line item numbers do raise a heightened scrutiny.
Absolutely, and that's why we brought some of these would be handled administratively, except for the fact like when I found the $1 million that needs to finish funding Fire Station 5, well, that puts it over Eaton's administrative threshold and needs to be presented to you to actually be enacted. I think it's more like you said, making it comprehensive required it to be it became cumulative and adding up numbers. But certainly I think we can, if you let us know what format, how we can break this down, the best way would be. The reason for the account codes are a little technical. That's because generally this document is generally like more of a technical document with the explanation at the bottom. I think I can figure out a way that can present it a little bit more intelligibly, and then you can see what each of these little sections does. But if you'd like to table it, we can certainly do that.
Mr. Paulson?
Yeah.
Thank
and
you.
I'd like the floor too.
So I guess one of my fundamental questions is, are you somehow funding something here that the city council has never funded before?
Actually, let me see. Veterans Park has been funded, but it needs more. Fire Station 5 actually was funded with not a commitment, because you can't commit past another year, but the idea that, yes, we'll give you $1 million next year, but now we can give you $1 million now, and then that does free up the budget, next year.
But council's already approved $1 million. The question is, where does it come from?
Right.
That's really what we're
That's
talking
just
about.
changing from where it's coming. A few, like I said, the moving the defibrillators from a capital purchase to a lease item. That's just included in here because it crosses funds. When you cross funds, generally you start to increase. That means one of the funds is generally going to get an increased budget. That has to be approved by that.
Right.
But the funding is just moving from one pocket to another.
So I guess one final question is, why has this money been lingering for so long without this being squared away? Or is this like we're kind of catching up here to a bunch of projects that we probably should have looked at before and cleaned up, and we just didn't, so now they're all coming together as this
It's
big
the
pile
latter.
of them?
It's the latter, Councilman, trying to clean up things.
That's why I'm here, to clean it up.
And I get it, and my request is in the future,
Yeah.
when a project is finished, let's do it then. We do it whenever real time indicates the money.
And actually, I believe the Public Works Department is getting a consultant to look at the life cycle of a capital project. In other words, how to get it budgeted, approved. Execution, well, that's at the risk of lots of external factors, but then also communicating to finance, we're done. And that's kind of the missing piece that, our great engineers are trying to put those projects in the ground. And sometimes that's not the biggest thing on their mind.
Well, I think they should tell you when a project's done, by God. That's my opinion, okay?
I think that's going to be addressed.
After that.
I agree with you very much.
All right, hold on, Dr. Kelly.
Okay. I've been a little conflicted over this particular agenda item. And let me just say, and I think it's been communicated, but I want to say it anyway, that I'm not a huge fan of this sort of fourth quarter comprehensive, 12 budget amendments totaling over $20 million on the same day that our budget process starts. Just not an enjoyable exercise. Let me put that out there. So I just have a couple of questions and suggestions. With regard to the narratives, which were helpful, by the way,
it would also be helpful to me to understand exactly why the numbers are shifting. You know, if a project came in under budget or if it's over budget, just having an understanding, just a little bit of context. You may not be able to directly provide that, obviously, but having that included as a part of the description, just so we can understand why so much shifting in the budgets. Also, just with respect to the documents, and this is small, but it would help me to have headings on each page of how the table breaks up page by page. I know that's small, but it would just help to navigate that. I did have a question about capital contingencies. Let me see. Where is this? There's a contingency. There's an amount, $468,000. Right now it's blue. It's one of the blue.
Yes, I see that.
Yeah.
That is
Is that contingency exclusive to Veterans Park?
Oh, no, that capital contingency is an account that's kind of our catch-all. It's where the formal use of it was kind of created, and looking at some old budget documents, which I don't think we even have on site anymore. There was a complex system where you did a project and you put 3% capital contingency. The only problem is that it's hard to say, well, you've got all these projects, which 3% is done? Do we close it out? Go give it back to the general fund? What do we do? So capital contingency generally became our catch-all for if a project's running a few $1,000s over, we'll get a little bit from capital contingency. You know, that's why we have it. If it ran under budget, let's just put in capital contingency, and then we can reallocate it to another project, maybe a new project to just start it up, you know, in the middle of the year that we have an opportunity to do. So it's basically our catch-all. A previous finance director described it as it's our fund balance of the capital fund, not technically from an accounting standpoint, but it's our, we've transferred money. It just stays there in capital contingency, ready to be used somewhere else. Plus, we try to calculate it and keep it at 3% of what I call open projects to make sure that we have that backup in case something crazy happens and we have to increase the budget of a project.
So that being said, I would support a deferral if someone put it on the table. But yeah, that's it for me for now. Thanks.
So just, can I ask that, since we've had all this discussion, is there going to be a change to the process, Eden, where quarterly there's some sort of a review to make sure that we're catching the projects that should have closed so we don't have this big one-time catch-up?
There is. Part of the reason why this is coming forward tonight as a comprehensive budget amendment is to make the most efficient use of council's time. We should not be putting a budget amendment on every single council agenda, and we had gotten to where we were doing that. My goal going forward is on a quarterly basis, we will bring forward budget amendments that need to be done so that we don't have to do such a large one at one point in time. It's also important to note that there, as I mentioned, has been a significant amount of cleanup work in the overall capital fund, trying to resolve some transition issues that have happened over the last few years, and that is one of the things that Michael has been working on, trying to make sure projects are closed out and that those dollars are being allocated at council's direction to the projects they need to be allocated to. And to Councilman Paulson's question earlier, there is nothing in here that is a new project. They are things that council has either approved, and we're now bringing the budget amendment forward to pay for it.
And I guess a second question is then, I know every year our financials are audited. Is this not something that the auditors would have looked at it from a process perspective, that we weren't going and closing projects and adjusting money? I mean, it's commonplace that when you run projects or programs that you do have to do puts and takes because of change, things that change, and you don't use the money and you need money and so forth. But this wasn't caught then. Is that, I guess I'm not sure why.
It's because the capital projects were still open. So this is part of the process of closing out those old capital projects.
And generally, we would get, as part of what I do when we're looking at closing books each year, is to make sure that the closed projects are closed and the other projects are, adequately funded going forward. Again, I think the reason we brought this particular amendment here instead of doing a lot of administratively is because we did need to get, I did want to present to council changing of the $1 million of funding to this, from next year speculatively to this year to get it done, and also to reallocate a very large amount to Veterans Park where it was voted to be done, but the budget, we didn't bring the budget amendment to it because we were directed to start making it more comprehensive. So that's why a lot of these ticky-tack. Some of these things, if they didn't cross funds, if they didn't actually increase the budget of funds, because accounting-wise, when you start crossing funds with something, one of the funds budgets increase. That requires council involvement.
Okay, I think we have a pretty clear consensus that council would like to study this further. A motion to table is always in order, and I would entertain such a motion if somebody wishes to bring it.
Paul?
Mr. Baumann.
I move that we table this item. I move that we table this agenda item.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Baumann. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved by Mr. Baumann, seconded by Dr. Kelly to table agenda item 2023-131. Just so that everybody knows, anything can be brought off the table at any time without any particular notice, so that gives the council flexibility to take it when they feel comfortable. The motion to table, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is tabled. Clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item 2023-132, consideration to approve the acceptance of a purchase and sale agreement for property located at 514 Hammond Drive and land lot 71 of the 17th of Fulton County, Georgia. That's tax parcel ID number 17007100030153. This is the Hammond Drive widening project presented by Public Works Director Marty Martin.
Mr. Martin.
Mayor and Council, good evening. Tonight I bring before you a recommendation to accept a purchase and sale agreement at 514 Hammond Drive in furtherance of project S2193. Alan Johnson updated you primarily on bridge type selection earlier this evening. The recommended closing price for that purchase is $450,000, again for 514 Hammond Drive. With this purchase, the city acquires yet another protected by in furtherance of project S2193. Alan gave you the timetable a little earlier tonight. We expect to have right-of-way plans available for the entirety of the project some late fall this year, with about a 2-year window for acquisition of final right-of-way required for the project. As well, this acquisition represents now some 26 parcel acquisitions that have been acquired for the project, with 5 displacements yet contemplated to take place to complete the displacement acquisition for the project. And finally, this particular residence is not deemed suitable for a public safety officer lease out, so it would be demolished ultimately.
You've heard the report of the Public Works Director. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul.
Ms. Mueller.
I move that we approve agenda item 2023-132, the approval of the acceptance of a purchase and sale agreement for property located at 514 Hammond Drive and land lot 71 of the 17th District of Fulton County, Georgia, tax parcel number 17-0071-0003-015-3, Hammond Drive widening project number S2193.
We have a motion by Ms. Mueller. Is there a second? Been moved by Ms. Mueller, seconded by Mr. DiGiulio, that we approve agenda item 2023-132, the acceptance of a purchase and sale agreement for property located at 514 Hammond Drive. Any discussion?
Mayor Paul.
Ms. Mueller.
Marty, did the project number change? Didn't this used to be TS 193?
It changed with the difference between T-SPLOS 2016 and T-SPLOS 2021. And that has to do with the number of character fields available in our financial system, Munis, in order to capture and identify a project. So with 2021, project move for the 2021 funds we're accumulating for the project, that $30+ million to S2193.
Okay. Maybe I'll have to go back and look, but I thought it was still labeled in some of the other city documents. I don't know, it was TS-193.
Right. So if you see earlier concept presentations, $14 million plus or minus went against the original project number.
Okay.
193.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on agenda item 2023-132, approving an acceptance of a purchase and sale agreement for property located at 514 Hammond Drive. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. Mr. Lee, would you like to opine on the next item?
Mayor and Council, I learned this afternoon that staff believes that they can spend some more time and exhaust some more functions to try and resolve the acquisition of this property before we seek the use of eminent domain. I ask and recommend that you table this item.
All right, you've heard the report of the city attorney. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul,
Ms. Mueller.
I move that we table agenda item 2023-133.
We have a motion by Ms. Mueller to table. Is there a second? Been moved by Ms. Mueller, seconded by Mr. Paulson, that we table agenda item 2023-133. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on the tabling of agenda item 2023-133. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. Moving to reports. Had a great concert Friday night, and probably, I think, the biggest crowd we've ever had at one of our Friday night concerts. Concert series will continue this Sunday at the Heritage Pavilion, or the amphitheater. And then we're starting a new one on Thursday, the following Thursday, Sundown Social. So there's a lot of activity going on that is free to our residents, and we kicked off the summer in April, so that's great. That's about all I can think of right now. Anybody else got anything? All right. Any staff reports?
No, sir.
All right. We'll need an executive session for real estate and litigation. Is there a motion?
Mayor Paul,
Mr. Paulson.
I move that we suspend regular order and move into executive session for the purposes of real estate and litigation.
We have a motion by Mr. Paulson. Is there a second? Been moved by Mr. Paulson, seconded by Mr. DiGiulio, that we suspend regular order and move to executive session for the purpose of real estate and litigation. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on the suspension of regular order. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. We are in executive session. As is our custom, we will simply go into executive session, return to this room, return to regular order, and then adjourn. There'll be no further business conducted this evening.